It looks like most of the audience has logged in by now. Looks like we're almost at capacity, so hopefully that doesn't cause too many issues, but we'll go ahead and get started. So, hello again, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today for our first webinar of 2017. My name is Melanie Ciotti from SDC, Statistics and Data Corporation, and I will be moderating today's webinar on site relationships, why they matter, and how to foster them. I am pleased to invite our guest speaker, Kelly White, from our partner company, Stiris Research, to present on this topic. Stiris is known for their relationship-based style of work, and Kelly is really an expert in the field, so we're very excited to have her here with us today presenting on this topic. Before I go ahead and introduce Kelly further, I do have a few housekeeping details that I would like to review about the webinar before we get started. First and foremost, the slide deck and the recording will be distributed to everyone who registered for the event in follow-up to the webinar. So that should be sent out in about 1 to 2 business days, so keep an eye out for that via email. And the presentation will also be hosted on SDC's and Stiris's website in the coming days, so feel free to send out the link to your colleagues if you think it's a good presentation that they might be interested in, and they'll be able to access it from there or, of course, via the email we send out as well. We have 2 audio options for today's presentation. You can either call in using the telephone number provided, or if you prefer, you can use your mic and speakers. And then finally, we will be having some time at the end of the presentation, probably about 15 to 20 minutes worth of Q&A. So throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to submit them through the questions portal on the webinar, and we will get to them as best we can. It's my pleasure to introduce Kelly White, Project Manager at Stiris Research. Kelly started her career as a trauma and critical care nurse, where she worked in the acute hospital setting for 10 years. She started working on clinical trials in the ICU and has been involved in the clinical research industry for 18 years. She has held multiple roles in the industry, including CRA, Regional Clinical Operations Manager, and Project Manager. A few of the major focus points during her career in clinical research have been in the areas of personalized healthcare and risk-based monitoring. She is currently a project manager at Stiris Research, an entrepreneurial clinical trial management company, where her daily activities include anything from site feasibility to study closeout, focused communication, and problem solving based on the sponsor's needs. Kelly is currently working on 3 projects across 75 sites in North America, and she's based in Vancouver, Canada. Kelly has presented this topic at industry conferences, including most recently at the Outsourcing and Clinical Trials Canada event, and we're honored to have her here with us today to share her experience in building and maintaining strong site relationships. For today's agenda, Kelly will be reviewing why site relationships matter from various perspectives, as well as checking in on how we're doing collectively as an industry. She'll also get into why it's difficult at times, looking at various barriers such as lots of priorities, working remotely, technology advancements. And then she'll get into what we can do to improve our relationships, which she has some great advice there that I hope you can all take home to your own organizations and put into play in your day-to-day work. Finally, she'll sum up with key takeaways that she likes to call Site Relationships 101. And again, we should have about 15 to 20 minutes worth of question and answers that we'll be able to get to at the end of the presentation. So go ahead and submit your questions through the webinar portal as they come up, and we will review them at the end. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Kelly White.
Thanks very much, Melanie. And good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you find yourselves today. A short while ago, I was preparing this content for the talk. I happened to attend a dinner with a group of old nurses, of which I'm one of those, and coincidentally walked into a conversation that touched on a very similar topic. And essentially, a nurse educator was talking about preparing a curriculum to assist staff in speaking to patients and their families. And obviously a gap or an issue had been identified, and it was significant enough to warrant some assistance there. So while the topic today is seemingly simple at first glance, The conversation I witnessed led me to think that, well, perhaps this is an issue with a reach beyond our industry focus today, and really maybe it's just a sign of the times as well. So I just prefaced the presentation with that story as a bit of a food for thought, and hope it sparks some good conversation when we leave today. So site relationships, I mean, obviously they're critically essential for our partners, our business, our patients, our sites. It is really the relationships that we build that allow all we need to accomplish fall into place where and when it needs to, but really often very underestimated. And so why do they matter so much? I mean, from a site perspective, it's about establishing trust, comfort, and reliability with a team that they'll likely be working with for several months to several years possibly. They're not shy to reach out to us and likely action study-related items or take action swiftly with confidence where a healthy relationship exists. Ultimately, when we speak to them and hang up the phone, we want them to feel confident and we want them to be able to execute what needs to be done rather than maybe hanging up the phone and putting it into the to-do later pile because they aren't too sure about what they really need to do there. So a sponsor or partner perspective, a positive and consistent impression in the field is really golden. And working in the healthcare realm is extremely personal, and the reputation is everything. Funny enough, same dinner party was a wealth of information for me. I also heard a story where I live. There's recently been a battle between two cable companies, and the fellow at the table was talking about a discussion with customer service he had from one of these said companies. And really, at the end of the day, he wasn't impressed with his interaction, and he was making his decision based on his customer service experience. So I think that speaks volume for how relationships really reflect upon the parent company, the sponsor, or partner. So a clinical research organization, we are often the pivot point where the site and the sponsor come together. And we're often the group to initiate and enable and foster various relationships that are important to our sites and partners. So ultimately to the patient benefit at the end of the day. So this is our business and we absolutely must be successful here. So the bottom line is, we're all people, all of the patient sponsors, sites, CROs, and people generally tend to thrive and succeed under circumstances of trust and familiarity. And when I refer back to the story about the customer service cable company there, the discussion the fellow at the dinner had, it's a really good example of how a human interaction influenced an action or a choice versus the superiority of the product. So he was going to base his choice solely on his interaction there. So, the big question is, are we pulling it off? And for the most part, we do, and we really do intend to. But while the ideals seem easy, we may miss the market times, and this either leaves a lasting negative impression or it really stalls the progress of the collective goals, neither of which is an outcome that we or the sites or patients can afford. Recently I've heard somewhat worrisome conversations. I mean, we've sat down and met with prospective new partners, and we hear things like, we want you to take this project on and help us rescue our site relationship. And, they feel that they need to point out to us that site relationships are very important. Hearing things like this when we meet with potential new clients is leading us to believe there's room for improvement, really, and that we're all not pulling it off to the degree that we really should be. So that leads us to take a look at, why are we having trouble with this and what do we have to do to overcome it in order to be better at it? Some of the barriers out there, we have, no matter what we're doing in clinical research, whether we're on the site side or the industry side, no matter what we do, we have a gazillion things to do every day. It's a never-ending checklist. We're verifying data, analyzing information, we're holding meetings and brainstormings on how we're going to better meet those targets and deadlines. We're traveling, we're confirming accountability on several levels, whether we're at the site or otherwise. And inevitably during any day, you're going to have a little snag or a wrench thrown in there, whether your computer crashes or, there's a whole change in the project plan. So with the never-ending checklist of tasks, site relationships seem to, at times, fall to the bottom of the list, and they're, kind of carried over to tomorrow or the next time. We can't forget some seriously important non-negotiable responsibilities that we also deal with at the same time. we're mindful of the regulations and guidelines, and we're out there enforcing those and making sure other folks are also following them. We're looking at safety to a huge degree. We're reporting everything we see and we discover, and really keeping the main focus on the person in the middle here is the patient, and that's the only reason we're doing it. So none of these can be put aside to the back burner at any time. And I think really importantly to mention too is we work in an increasingly remote world. So it's a different world today. Relationships are being built and maintained with our sites and our colleagues that require a bit more thought and ingenuity than what we might have been required in the past. We're working with global team members and sites that may reside on the other side of the country or perhaps in a completely different country altogether. And we may never have the opportunity to meet some of our sites or team members actually. On-site CRA visits may not be as frequent. We work in an increasingly risk-based targeted approach here. And when those on-site visits do occur, they're often extremely busy. So the time factor there, we're increasingly rushed in face-to-face interactions. Really, the CRAs must use the remote time to their advantage. I use the CRA as my very first example here, but it's important to mention that many roles must share this responsibility of creating and maintaining the relationships. Take the project manager, for example. Responsibilities are often greatly, reduced, or the opportunities actually for the PM are greatly reduced for on-site time, and we have to be creative and proactive in these cases. So developing those relationships remotely from the very beginning. Some key global roles have the least opportunity for local face-to-face interaction, but they have the potential to really impact and influence people's understanding and undertaking of their specific roles in the study. For example, the science team, the medical monitoring team, and the global project teams, they all have a lot to offer, but really have minimal opportunity there. So investigator meetings are taking place more and more frequently in the form of remote meetings. And this is understandable. This is both a fiscal consideration and a time management consideration. Whenever we've got to get on a plane and travel somewhere, it's the site's time, the investigator's time, and the company time as well. So these are all really big considerations when we're living in a remote world here. And we can't overlook the technology and the influence of technology. It really is a sign of the times and is a huge influencer on our entire industry. Progress in technology allows us to function in a global environment in real time. We can safely process and submit data faster than ever before. That allows us to efficiently bring treatment to the patient. I remember back in the day, not too long ago, when we would pack up the IND submission into 10 or 12 semi-trucks full of paper and deliver it to the FDA, and we absolutely can't go backwards here. I mean, technology is going forward, and we need to move with it. But I think we really do need to sit back and remember that site relationships may require a bit of the old-fashioned thinking, care, and attention, and we can't handle everything really solely by using a text, a tweet, or an email. And we also find ourselves in the midst of an industry explosion. We've seen advances in Hep C treatment, immunochemotherapy combinations, and endless other quite significant breakthroughs over the last few years. So science is moving at lightning speed. And, putting these discoveries into the clinical trial setting has resulted in a fast-paced pharma and biotech explosion. And to support that explosion, we really have seen many new talented members joining the industry, PMs, scientists, CRAs alike. And I use an example here. We're keenly aware from some stats in 2015, in the USA alone, there were 10,000 CRA positions open. So that was a shortage that needed to be filled. We're working hard to ensure that all these new people in the industry know their regulations, their GCPs, core competencies, but really, have we afforded the time to, share, mentor, and demonstrate the art of the site relationship with them? Have we fostered the chance for everyone to gain experience and comfort with building relationships, or have we kind of overlooked this? We spotlight often the complexities of study assessments and tests, but we often forget the basics. And, no amount of knowledge in our minds will translate into getting the job done effectively without the art of the relationship. So being able to read people and adapt your plan on the fly is really a completely different skill set. So taking all those variables into account, brings us to ask, what can we do about it? And the actions we take, will they help build and maintain our relationships? So just talking about a few solutions and suggestions, I mean, start with your own core base team there. Does your own team know anything about each other? If they don't, how likely are they to reach out, ask questions, and really gain comfort with the study within the team and confidently represent that while they're on site? We always suggest regular calls to touch base, and this basically, it just kind of creates some familiarity, basically. And it's applicable to the core team as well as the sites. And again, not just leaving it up to the CRA. It really is across the whole team. A great example I can say of this with the BD team that I work with, they make regular calls out to our site management networks, even during off-project times, and sharing updates on a continuous basis rather than only rekindling the relationship when a new project is starting. And this is a continuous sense of team and familiarity. Talk about remote team calls. I talk about offer pictorial introductions, and I will show you an example of that on the next slide. And using comedy, if you're comfortable with it. If you're not, then it could just get a bit weird, but using comical but appropriate examples within your training sessions is fabulous. I think we always recall a professor or a leader or a manager who used some personal or funny anecdote when making a point or teaching a class, and that's exactly what the same thing we're trying to instill here. That little thing always comes to the back of your mind when you find yourself in a certain situation. And, really share something about yourselves. We often have an insight into our team or our sites that is not reciprocal. For example, we collect the site CVs, but share nothing about our credentials with them, really. As a manager of a team, you, again, may have just interviewed that newest member and really know a lot about them, but not necessarily shared anything about yourself. So one little thing you share with someone opens a door for conversation and a small sense of trust from which to build on. So this is the pictorial example I use myself because it's only fair. Quite a few of us here at Stiris use this. It's really just a different way to introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself again, so it's reciprocal. In just a few seconds, you can probably look at this and figure out that I'm a bit goofy. I want to let people know a little bit about my style and my interests, as well as, a little bit about where I come from, because that's only fair. I can't take complete credit for this. I worked with a CRA who was working on a North American project team, and she knew everybody on there was quite shy. You need to build some team confidence. She used this as an icebreaker, had the team join in, and it absolutely worked. So I think it's a fantastic way just to break the ice and let people know where you're coming from, as you may not actually meet those folks for a very long time. Involving key global roles. I touched upon this a little bit earlier when speaking about our remote environment. I think we need to seize the opportunities to have them interact with sites, give them a name and a personal relationship. We have several global roles. We have project managers, science teams, medical monitors, stats, and lab data managers, and I think there's always an opportunity to pull them in. The sites also like to know what's going on in the rest of the world. You often will hear a site say, I really enjoyed that call. It was interesting to hear what Australia is doing with this. The docs love it too. They often have more questions after you finish with that. We have invited science members and medical monitors to present on maybe the key aspects of an amendment, or maybe there's something that they know can be done a little bit better, and we've had several questions on the same topic, so it makes sense to clarify some common therapeutic questions coming from the field. I think data management as well is a really key point here. It's another great example, and after the freeze-through patients are enrolled, there's always an opportunity to field questions or message common issues that we're noting within the electronic data capture system. So really seize these opportunities, and it gives these guys a name rather than saying, oh, I'm going to give science a call. And they actually are people sitting there, and depending on the size of your team, this could really have a lot of impact. So I think leading by example is a really good core value here. Attend a site visit with your team members, or partner a senior level mentor with a more junior mentor. Emphasis really here on site interaction and comfort level rather than 100% of the core competencies. Just take a little bit of a step back and take some time to do that. If you're working with a CRO or a sponsor, build these visits into your model. This is a priceless people investment, really is. And again, it extends beyond the CRA role. I emphasize this a few times during the talk. PMs and other team members may need mentoring too. I think one's age, stage of life, or education level does not automatically translate into their confidence on site. I remember a colleague of mine is a fantastic physician, and he often told me a story. He said, I'm so embarrassed about the days when I started out and the way I would speak to families and their patients and their families alike, because it wasn't until I started watching my colleagues and kind of getting a sense of what kind of style I wanted to have and maybe I should change the way I'm doing things that I kind of picked up a little bit from them. So really leading by example, that's a fantastic example of that. Different cultures we have to keep in mind as well, and be aware that what we're comfortable with may not be easy to read for folks new to the local region, and that could be site staff and that could be someone on your team alike, really. Assess things before you get to the visit. Are there some areas where the team members have experienced difficulty in the past? Some examples of these, being turned down repeatedly for a meeting with the investigator, or site staff is really, really too busy and they're not really sure how to approach them. Nothing breaks my heart more than being witness to a highly stressed individual being given a no response to the classic yes or no question, and not knowing how to recover from that. We have to take ourselves back to the things we ever did for the first time, and recall how easy it was to feel deflated under stress. And we may walk the walk and be able to do this simply now, but we really do need to take ourselves back there. So assist them to reformulate a new approach is really, really the message there. So some remote strategies to help foster your site relationship. Again, I come back to the pictorial introductions, but invite the site team to prepare and share that. If you've got a North American team, you really want to generate some more conversation, but you feel people are quite shy, and that often does happen on teleconferences. Invite your site team to prepare and present that. If you've got a big team, maybe it can only be a couple people per call, but it really does break the ice and helps. Ask the site members to present topics as well. Perhaps one of the sites recently came up with a great idea or has a great recruitment strategy that's working really well. The sites like to get involved, and they actually enjoy doing this, and that really enhances the relationship. Help your team learn to plan. And some of this stuff might seem quite elementary, but really, again, let's take ourselves back to the beginning. Work around clinic times for your calls. Suggest that there's 3 or 4 options and dates to choose from rather than just suggesting one opportunity. And remember to make mention of the successes and celebrate them. We often bring corrections and issues to light, but we forget to kind of focus on the positive aspects as well. So plan ahead for deadlines, outline the tasks and timelines, and make it simple and easy. There's nothing worse for the sites than to get the classic forward of that huge project email, and they kind of look at it with their eyes start swirling and they have no idea what to pull out of there. We really need to pull out what they need to focus on and facilitate their success and meeting targets, really just to help them focus on what they need to know. And I think lastly, always have a plan B. I think this just isn't just the industry. I think in life it's good to have a plan B. We include the site in the planning and understanding of the plan and the backup plan. And there's no last-minute scrambles or having to find an able body to complete a database lock. Really, plan A and plan B is the bottom line. So teamwork is extremely important. Ensure your sites know that you're on the same team. When they find themselves in a tight spot, respond as a team member and say, what can we do to sort this out together? Sometimes when you ask people, well, what are you going to do about that? It's basically like, okay, you're on your own. So, really important how we respond to them when they find themselves in a bit of a pickle as well. So what are the results of establishing these relationships? The sites, they tend to contact you more often. There's less chance of misunderstandings, mishandling of the protocol, or surprise issues that pop up. They have confidence with the study, and this translates into their interactions with their patients as well. We hope that the patients interacting with these confident site staff, walk away feeling secure and fully informed as well. for the sponsors and partners, they tend to benefit from the great relationships that all team members have with the site. So those last-minute protocol changes or data queries that do happen in our world seem to run a little more smoothly, where an effective relationship has been established versus one that does not exist at all. CROs, our livelihood depends heavily on this relationship, and we will be afforded the opportunity to bring treatments to patients once again if we actually succeed here. So what are some of the main points to walk away with from this? I think one of the most important things, and every time I went out with a new team member, is really reinforcing that this involves all levels of the team, and all levels of the team should be treated as equally important. I think from the global science leader to the person that books your visits and greets you at the clinic front desk, and that's really what I'm talking about. I can't stress this enough. Never underestimate the role that each and every person plays on the team, and the impact of how you interact with them leaves a lasting impression. Some additional takeaways here. I have touched on this a little bit a few minutes ago, but one's level of education or years of experience or GCP exam score doesn't really translate to their level of comfort or ability to foster effective relationships. We really can't assume. There very well could be a senior member of your team that's either afraid to ask for help or maybe completely unaware that their communication style could use a bit of a tune-up until they actually observe you leading by example. And when you are leading by example, do so in a non-intimidating fashion. Offer some remote suggestions and strategies, a few of those we talked about, and build their confidence and just be available to them. Help them find their comfort zone and be able to independently walk the walk and talk the talk, as the saying goes out there. The core competencies are scientific knowledge, looking at safety, applying GCP and the regulations, are all responsibilities that cannot be diminished at any time. However, the relationships that we build are the key to effectively driving these clinical trials. I think ultimately the measuring stick for me is the day that we meet with a prospective new client and they don't feel the need to tell us that the relationships are important. It'll instead be an unspoken given. And really, we're all together in this. It's an exciting frontier, and hopefully we can all kind of work towards this common goal together. And I think, Melanie, that's about all I had.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kelly. What a great presentation. And we do have, for everybody, contact information up here for both Kelly at Stiris and myself at SDC. And we do have several questions that have come in throughout the presentation. So if you've been thinking about any, sitting on any, definitely feel free to submit those through the portal, and we'll get to it. But I do have one question here, Kelly, about leading by example, and they're just asking if you could give some more examples of leading by example.
Sure, absolutely. I'm thinking one of the most common instances where probably comfort and confidence level may not be high is when they meet with the medical staff or the PI for the first time. And I mean, these folks are busy. They may not have the affordability of a lot of time to spend with people. I always warn people about that. And having a plan before you meet is really key, as well as a backup list of items that absolutely must be discussed. This should be planned really ahead of time. So changes to a planned meeting often completely derail people due to the fact that they're so focused on task at hand rather than connecting with the person they're there to meet. So, being able to read a situation and adapt quickly takes preparation. Something that I always suggest is, and we often take this into practice at Stiris when we're going out with folks for the first time, is letting the site staff know exactly what you have in mind. Most of our folks we work with are quite seasoned, but we have to remember that, sometimes people have different stress triggers. So I always say, I just want to run through my study updates with you, my targets, and then when you have a few moments at the end, I want to go through some source clarifications. And be prepared with your plan B. The doctor's not going to say to you, you know what, the clinic has an emergency, I apologize, I need to leave in about 5 minutes. So here you come, you got to think fast on your feet. So suggest a meeting later or move your most pertinent items to the front, such as the source clarifications on the to-do list. So indicate that you follow up with the rest by email. And do remember, though, if you have a serious study matter to discuss, then delaying it's really not a good option. So the plan is to really ensure before you walk away, set up a phone call or an agreed time to meet for sure.
Great, thank you, Kelly. Here's another example question, or asking for an example. Says, do you have an example of something that went very wrong due to miscommunication or non-communication?
Yeah, it's funny. Something way back in the day in my career at the beginning that pops into my mind was, a situation whereby there was a fairly huge non-negotiable database deadline, and the site staff were all out of office. They were either on vacation or attending conferences. The assumption had been made that the site staff had received an email probably 6 or 8 weeks ago. So they had been well informed and there should be no issues in meeting the target. And really, an established relationship could have been avoided, this mishap altogether, because they probably would have picked up the phone and said, hey, Kelly or John or Joe, we're going to be away, so let's work on a plan here. So that really was a situation that was quite dire.
Great example there, Kelly. Building off the last question, what actions can you take to prevent or correct for these mishaps?
So I think, once timelines are communicated in writing, a request, in that writing, when you do send that first notification, really request potential vacation out of office dates. That's important. A phone call should follow up and discuss what the backup plan is going to be for any key staff that may be away. So who's going to be covering for them, really? Formulate a plan with data management to potentially fast track this particular site for review if there's really going to be a skeleton staff on during this time. Let your colleagues know, what is expected, and you're going to assist them to help things work, but really letting them know that missing the deadlines is not an option. So it's okay to stand firm while you're helping them work out a plan. And I think checking in with progress reports every couple of weeks and more frequently as you get closer to the target keeps things top of mind, for me anyway, and for the site, and lets them know how things are progressing. And, bottom line, very minimum, follow-up with a follow-up call is required, but if a relationship had been previously established, chances are the site would have probably called you first, and that often is where you're going to find yourself.
Perfect. Then we have another question that just came in, Kelly. Can you advise someone how to accomplish the important daily checklist and simultaneously make time to ensure one is connecting with their study site?
All right, so we do have that huge checklist, and sometimes we put that down to the bottom of the list, but I think a common approach we use at Stiris is, centered around the prioritization of one's daily big list. So every day or every week, we all like to make a to-do list for ourselves, and I always like to look at my list as what absolutely has to be done today or this week. If it's delayed, it will be out of compliance or negatively impact the program or the team. And in another pile or list, I have a list of things, what would be great if I got this done this week or today, but can actually be delivered tomorrow or the following day without a huge impact. So I think we need to add touching base with the sites to that list and look at it the same way. It can be negatively impactful to avoid or put off speaking to a site, even if you're just checking in to see if things are going okay. Do they have any questions? So in fact, putting that seemingly simple item into the important must-get-done list will impact and enhance all of the team that needs to get done. So I think we kind of overlook that. It sometimes gets to go into the pile where I'll do it later. So really, I think that's the approach we like to take here. Mel, did we have any other questions there?
Yes. We do have this question that's been asked a few times in a few different ways. So essentially, how do other team members that are not the project manager or CRA, like the data manager, for example, contribute to building strong relationships when they often don't interact directly with the site? And Kelly, I'd like to address this briefly if I could, and then definitely please add to it if you can. But we have a lot of experience with this at SBC as a specialized biostatistics and clinical data management company. Sometimes our data managers do interact directly with the sites, and other times they interact indirectly through the project manager, CRAs, monitors, and other team members. But the key for all of these interactions is, and I actually just spoke with my colleague Bev about this, just last week, and she said, building a personal relationship through respectful, prompt, and personable communication really across the entire study team. And for us, data in and of itself is rather impersonal, but it's just as important for the data management team to build rapport and personal relationships with those they interact with to really foster strong relationships throughout the entire study team. And Kelly, just like you said, we're all in this together. We're all part of the same team, and it's important for everyone on the project team, even data managers and statisticians and the sponsor company, even though they're not interacting directly with the sites as much if they're hiring a CRO. It's really important for everyone to help build harmonious relationships across the board.
No, I absolutely agree. And actually just thinking about that, I can use probably a recent event and kind of a habit that we kind of like to form on our teams. I can use Chanel as an example. Chanel's a data manager at SDC. I work with her closely. And I think depending on the size of your team, I mean, you certainly cannot have 75 sites calling into one data manager. You really do need to field those questions. But I think for common issues that a site might be having difficulty, we do put Chanel in touch with them directly. She's fantastic. And then we're putting a name to that data manager that we call. I mean, she actually does have a name. She's Chanel. They do refer to her on site as well by her first name rather than, can you call data management. Recently we've had a big deadline, and Chanel and I got together and decided when can we run the missing pages report, when can we run the open queries reports, and we let the sites know that we'll be doing this behind the scenes and these are the dates you're going to receive it, the CRAs as well. So the sites feel like, okay, they're checking up, they're going to let us know if I've missed something. They do have a bit of a safety net there, and they really do like that. And they know that we're behind them. So I think we all kind of, again, represent ourselves as a team, and that it's not just them out there, that we're going to be checking in with them and we're watching out for them as well.
Great, thank you so much for adding that in. And we have a question here asking, what do you mean, or what did you mean when you said that the partner needed you to come in and rescue their site relationships? Could you elaborate on that?
Sure. I mean, I think maybe just what we hear most commonly are statements like, sites seem to have a lack of confidence in the team. They've had this fed back to them. Or we hear sponsors or new clients tell us that descriptions, they give us descriptions of ineffective communications, or even worse, reportedly no communication. So I think these are probably the 2 or 3 top ticket things that we hear when we meet with new people for the first time.
Great. And then speaking of rescues, we have a question here that came in a little earlier. What strategies do you employ to rescue site relationships that started off on the wrong foot by another team? So I'm assuming this is more like a rescue study where a sponsor has switched their CRO from one company to another, and now the new CRO is essentially inheriting site relationships that have already been damaged.
Yeah, good question, and it is something that we unfortunately have experience in. I think site relationships, they fail for a variety of reasons. There may be a lot of turnover at the CRO that they've been working with, or communication might fail. The project teams sometimes work in silos. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing sometimes, and nobody really talks to each other. So for whatever reason, when you're asked to come in as a new monitor or a new project manager or the new data management team, any part of the new team that inherits a damaged relationship, you have to build it back up swiftly and efficiently, and this is really our focus. So we focus on these situations. That what we do first is we try to build and put forth a team that's really armed with all the knowledge they need to approach the site and sponsor team with confidence. So this doesn't mean that we know everything. We don't even want to appear that we know everything, because that's impossible, but we must share enough to foster putting some serious skin in the game and in a confident manner. So you can't walk in and really speak to a site confidently if you're not armed with anything, any knowledge behind you. I'll use an example. So take the whole scenario out of the clinical trial setting here to keep it simple. Let's say you're stepping in to take over the management of a football team, and you want to repair the working relationship with the team stakeholders. So our approach here, we'd want our management team to know the history of the team, its competition in the field, its strengths, and, and what sets it apart from the other players in the field, and where they need to go from here. So what are the major targets for the short term and the long term? And these are the main things that we need to focus on right away. The same applies to your team of project managers and CRAs going into the site for the first time. So we need to be secure in our knowledge base in order to foster credibility and trust. And also being able to ask the intelligent questions where we need to fill in the gaps. So we also know where we're missing some information, and we know where to get it. Those folks who are meeting on site are the experts. So the next steps is, we want our sites to feel exactly the same way we do. So it's not just us and them, it's us all together. So we need to determine what do they need from us, and are we on the same page here after our very first meeting? And we need to ask. It can't be understated. So really, in my experience, the instability in staff turnover, which we do see in our industry, generally comes from a lack of understanding about the project and really a sense that no one has their back or a team behind them. The flight response is understandable in this type of recipe, yet sadly it's also completely avoidable. So I think this is a team approach that we use here at Stiris, Melanie, and I think you and I've had a few discussions in preparation for this, and I think you share the same philosophy at SDC. In fact, I think we've probably worked through a few of these scenarios together. So hopefully that is a good example, but that's really in a nutshell with our approach here.
Thanks, Kelly, and yes, I definitely agree, and a great analogy there with the Super Bowl coming up this weekend and the football teams. But I agree 100%, preparation is key in rebuilding relationships and rebuilding trust at the end of the day. One of our core values here at SDC is ownership, which we define as taking ownership of projects and doing what we say we will. And I really think that's the best advice to rebuild trust and rebuild relationships, is simply do what you say you will. For most of us, we think that's kind of a given, but to a site or a sponsor that has already had their trust broken by a former team, they likely have several things which have gone wrong, and giving them that reassurance that we're prepared to make things right, we're all in this together, and you're not alone, can really go a long way in rebuilding that relationship, and as you said, fostering that mentality of a singular us and a singular team. So we do have several more questions that have come in. I don't think we'll be able to get to them all today, but I'd like to leave the webinar portal open for a few more minutes to let additional questions come in, and then we'll do our best to respond to those via email and follow-up. So thank you so much, Kelly, for speaking to this and for your detailed presentation here on site relationships. And I hope that all of you in the audience are able to take away some valuable information today that you can bring back to your studies and your organizations. Again, we have cataloged all of the questions. We'll do our best to follow up with them. Feel free to submit more in the coming minutes. I'll keep it open. Otherwise, this concludes our presentation for today, and we thank you all very much.